Okay. We ready to start?
Yes.
Okay. Okay, well, thank you very much all for being here and welcome to the Institute for Religious Tolerance, Peace and Justice Annual March 2023. So I am Reverend Olivia McDuff from the Church of Scientology, and it is my true honor to serve as your Master of Ceremony for this incredible event. Now, for today's event, we will hear from those who, like you, stand for peace, justice, and religious freedom. As we know, and as we say, an attack on one religion is an attack on all religions, and an attack on any of us is an attack on all of us. And so the right to believe what we want to believe isn't a right we can take for granted. This is a right that we have to continually fight for and that we have to protect. And with hate crime and hate speech in the rise in the county of Los Angeles, now more than ever, we need to stand together, unite, and get our voices heard. And that is why we are here today. So now, today we will walk from this church all the way to the Islamic Center of Southern California, where food and refreshment will be served. Now, thank you again for being here, and I hope you have a very great afternoon. And so first, I would like to start today's Interfaith Solidarity March with someone whose action not only embody the definition of respect and tolerance for all faiths, but one who inspires so many others to do the same. So please welcome the founder of the Institute for Religious Tolerance, Peace and Justice, Dr. Eric Greenberg.
Thank you so much, Olivia, and thanks to all of you for being here. And by the way, this is my new suit, and I only realized about 30 minutes ago how much it's reminiscent of clerical clothing, and that was not my intention. So please don't call me father. I want to welcome you all to the 8th annual, yes, the 8th annual Interfaith Solidarity March, LA. I'm going to go off script here for a second, but who would have thought the first year in 2016 that we would continue to be going? And maybe I'll ask the same thing a year or two from now when we hit our 10th, and I'll say, you remember that 8th year? And I said, wow, you know, anyway. So this march is a flagship partner in the Interfaith March for Peace and Justice community, which is the largest coalition of interfaith marches in the world. So I'm going to keep my remarks right now somewhat brief, which is something I've never done before. There are a lot of important speakers here today, and I want to make sure that we have enough time for all of them to speak. So if you really want to hear me say something unique and special, you can make sure you stay with us till the very end of today, and I'll be speaking at the very end. But meanwhile, let me just talk a little bit about the history of this march and our theme today. For those of you who are not familiar with this march, or maybe this is your first time joining us, we've been marching since 2016 in this march here in Los Angeles. This began as primarily a march to support the Muslim community following the 2015 San Bernardino shootings, which triggered some Islamophobic incidents, and our march focused mainly on the unity between the Abrahamic traditions. That first march was so successful that we did it again. But in 2017, we really emphasized the inclusion of the larger interfaith community and not just Abrahamic faiths. In fact, we were joined by people of every faith and even people of no faith, as the humanist and agnostic community came out to give their support during that year, 2017. That march was so successful that we were asked to help launch a sister march in the San Fernando Valley that same year in 2017. Since that time, we've seen ups and downs in our numbers of participants, since there is a lot of activist fatigue, as I'm sure some of you know. Everybody's very active in doing sorts of things, and sometimes you just got to stay home. But we've reached larger and larger audiences as we became a flagship march of the Interfaith March for Peace and Justice Coalition in 2018. And I know there's a lot of alphabet soup, so you'll hear me refer to that as the IMPJ. Don't mix that up with the IRTPJ. I know, like, you'll get used to it. Sometimes I have trouble getting used to it. And we've been the lead organization of the IMPJ since 2019. That community includes no fewer than 24 marches around the world, who are marching in solidarity with us, some on this very day, and others during seasons that are more comfortable in their regions. And I would remind you that this is the hot season for our member marches in Pakistan and India. So they're marching at a different time. During the pandemic, we took our 2020 and 2021 marches virtual, and in 2022, last year, we returned finally to the streets of Los Angeles. So this is the second year that we are marching in the streets in person since the pandemic began, and now is our 8th consecutive year of this event. We've done a lot in just a couple of years, and we're glad that you have joined us today. So what are we marching for or about today? Our theme is, as you've noticed on the flyers, finding hope in uncertain times, confronting violence, bigotry, and incivility. Our nation is divided on many levels. We're seeing a divided world. We're seeing increased hatred, more hate crimes. We've seen increases in religious bigotry and intolerance. Earlier this month, we saw vandalism at the Islamic Center of Southern California, tragically. At this time, we need to focus on civil discourse and the need to listen to others, even if you disagree with them. This is an opportunity for that. I know that the interfaith community tends to skew left, and that's fine. And we all tend to be peacemakers. So there's a lot we already agree on. But there are likely people in this crowd who don't necessarily agree with you on every single thing. Imagine that. But we have agreed to march together in peace and to learn a little bit of something about each other, to put aside our differences for a few hours or maybe longer, so that we can demonstrate to the rest of the world that this can be done. It can be done. People of different faiths and ideologies can come together peacefully and walk in the same direction for the same purpose, to protect each other's religious and philosophical freedom, and for the greater good of our city and our nation, and for the sake of humanity and the world. And instead of responding with more hatred and violence, we're going to respond with love wherever possible. That we can do it, if we can do it, anyone can do it. If we, this group of peacemakers, can do it, anyone can do it. And I think that's a pretty good mission. So I want to invite all of you to walk with someone you have never met before. Come out of your shell, put aside your natural shyness and tendency that most of us have, the tendency to want to only associate with people that we know or those who seem like us. Talk with someone of a different faith or someone who doesn't look like you. And I want to thank you for being here today and for believing in this march 8 times in a row. So thank you.
Our next speaker is Monsignor Frank Hicks, who was ordained to the priesthood in January 2000. He has served at St. Basil since July 2006, first as administrator and then pastor in 2007. He is the director of the Cardinal McIntyre Charitable Foundation, senior chaplain of the Los Angeles Police Department, chaplain for the Emerald Society of Los Angeles, chaplain for the Fraternal Order of Retired Border Patrol Officers, senior officer of the Victor McLaglen Motorcycle Stunt and Drill Team, and supply chaplain at Cedar Sinai Hospital. Please welcome.
Thank you. Now that I think of it, I didn't realize it, but I am. Just as a preface to my my invocation, my prayer, I was a born optimist, but in these recent years I've become less so, somewhat more cynical. I remember when I was growing up, with things that are happening today and accepted today would not have been acceptable in the 60s and the 70s and the 80s, where hatred has been institutionalized and become profitable as a political instrument of control and acceptance. And I think we always have to keep that awareness of that people use hatred and discord as an instrument of control. It's a threat, a very real threat to our community, whether it be in the legislature in Tennessee, the vandalism of a religious site, even so close to us as the Islamic Center. Who would have thought even 5 years ago that people would that would be an issue. So we just have to redouble our effort and be aware of don't let people use us as instruments of hate and discord and power control. With that being said, we have to bring down some understanding of our spiritual foundation. Most compassionate and benevolent Creator, author of life and human purpose, heed our pleas and petitions. Let our cries be heard. We hear the cries of the discarded and the lament of the bereaved and the agony of the dispossessed. We behold the recklessness and injustice in our streets. We discern the grave imbalance in our economies. We are nearly overwhelmed by the enormity of the challenges. Let not our hands be still, our voice be silent, or efforts be frustrated, or our strivings come to naught. Open our hearts to a sense of compassion. Galvanize our purpose of sharing, service, commitment, and justice. Continue to bond us as brothers and sisters. Comfort and heal the sick, the bereaved, and the bewildered. Strengthen our commitment to equity, our dedication to fair play. Bolster the resolve of government and those with the ingenuity to help. Open our minds and hearts to embrace unity, helpfulness, and fraternity, and to build a community inspired in your spirit. In the name of mercy, healing, and compassion, we pray. Amen. Thank you.
Our next speaker is Reverend Skip LaRue, Executive Director Emeritus of the Queen's Federation of Churches, a stalwart defender of religious freedom both domestically and internationally. Reverend Skip LaRue has served the Queen's Federation of Churches Ecumenical Council in New York City for 41 years. He continues as the moderator of the National Interfaith Committee on Religious Liberty based in Washington, D.C. He has served in that position since the year 2000. Please welcome him.
Good afternoon. Good afternoon. It certainly is something I regard as a privilege to be with you to support the work that you're doing here in Los Angeles. I'm not from Los Angeles. I don't live in Los Angeles, so I don't know a lot of the particular issues locally. But I certainly understand them as they go out across the country and really around the globe. I was in New York City as an ecumenical leader when the towers of the World Trade Center came down in 2001. I saw how the community came together following that tragedy. I saw people volunteer not just to help the rescue people, but to come together spontaneously that very evening in churches, synagogues, and mosques to offer prayers of unity. And for the next several weeks, we saw this coming together strongly in the city of New York, where the greatest tragedy had occurred. Mid-October, I had to go out for a board meeting in Ohio. I was driving across Pennsylvania, and as you turn the dial on the radio, we didn't have CDs in the car at the time. Turn the dial on the radio, I could not believe the hatred that I was hearing on the radio from people who were not from where the disasters occurred in New York and Washington, but people who wanted to capitalize on this kind of division to stoke hatred, pure venom. My career as an ecumenical leader has caused me to understand, I think, in some depth, since I've had lots of time to think about this, of what it means to be ecumenical. You may know that the word ecumenical itself comes from the Greek word oikumene. Now, if I asked you what ecumenical means, I suspect that a lot of people would say, oh, it kind of means universal, all together, or something like that. Well, actually, that's the meaning of Catholic. But ecumenical, oikumene, is the place of habitation where people live. And the ecumenical vision is that this world is the household of God, where the family of God lives together. Scripture teaches us that we are made in the image of God. We are God's children, all of us, irrespective of where we were born, what faith we follow, what other traditions of nationality or tribe we adhere to. But we are fundamentally children of God, sons and daughters. And that makes us brothers and sisters, even to those whom we've never met and probably never will meet. Now, think about what that means for family values, a term that's kind of been turned upside down in recent decades. Think about what that means in your own family. Mother, father, children, aunts, uncles, grandparents, whoever lives together in your household or had lived in your household. Did you always agree? Probably not. Did you fight sometimes? Did you argue sometimes? I'm sure you did. But at the end of the day, there was never a time when you did not recognize your common identity as members of that family, of that household. That's what we have to say to each of us, ourselves first and to the others, that we are fundamentally members of the same family of God, living in God's household. To me, that's the ecumenical vision, and that goes on, certainly in an interfaith basis. It embraces not just Christianity or Judaism or Islam, but it embraces all of the faiths and all of the people who live in God's household, this planet, this place of creation, this place of habitation. That's, I think, the essential message. And if we fundamentally believe that, and if we can cause others to fundamentally see and to believe that, it can dampen down some of this violence and hatred, because we cannot tolerate, as a society, the tearing apart for gain politically, economically, or otherwise. We need to recognize that the family of God is the fundamental of this household of God. God bless you in this march. I pray that we will be successful in reaching people and in teaching them that tolerance, that embracing one another, not because of our differences, but I should say not in spite of our differences, but because of our differences, so that we may come to see each other and in each other's face, that sister and that brother. Be well.
Our next speaker is Mr. Mike Feuer, former LA City Attorney. Mike Feuer's extraordinary devotion to public service continues to demonstrate that with vision, courage, and practical skill, one person can make a big change happen. Mike has proven it by successfully challenging powerful interests, fighting for the rights of 50,000 seniors, families, and people with disabilities. Mike has a long history of building interfaith alliances that reflect the diversity of our community, all in the pursuit of a more fair, inclusive, and just society.
Thank you very much. We're here at the edge of Koreatown when the former president referred to COVID as Kung Flu. There are members of this community, especially senior citizens, who are afraid to go out on the street, afraid to get groceries. But the community embraced them because we are so much better than that. When there was an attack on the west side at a restaurant where a bunch of thugs approached a group having dinner and asked, "Who's a Jew?" A man stood up and said, "I am." And he took a brutal beating for saying that. He wasn't Jewish. He was Armenian Christian. He stood up because we need to stand together. When the former president enacted the Muslim travel ban, an entire community descended on the Islamic Center to stand together as one city in solidarity, expressing the best of who we are. There are so many instances when a moment of hate, a second of division, an attempt by people to tear us from one another, was transformed by people committed to displaying the fundamental humanity and the unity that ought to pervade this city, this society, this nation. With due respect for one of the terms that is being used today, I don't use the word tolerance to describe what our highest aspirations are. Because tolerance connotes that there's something about the other person we don't like, but we'll learn to live with it for the sake of some harmony. That is not the best of who we are. Respect, mutual appreciation, trust, those are the attributes of a society that can truly claim the dignity that we all aspire to. So for today, I just want to conclude by saying this. We all know this is a very tough moment for all of us, not just here on this block or in this city or in this state or in this nation, but in our world. It's so tumultuous. There is hate that is rearing its head. It's been unleashed. It's a tough time. So that moment requires of us a level of urgency and intensity. It requires of each of us to look within ourselves. Is this the moment which we're going to use to define ourselves with courage, with the humanity that I alluded to earlier, by reaching out and lifting up someone else? That's the community that I choose to live in, and that is what led all of you today to join in this important event. Thank you for coming.
Fantastic. Thank you very much to all our speakers so far. And now we welcome professional singer, healer, and ceremonialist with over 20 years of experience performing music and sacred ceremonies for healing and transformation, Havala Starlight.
Thank you, everyone. Thank you. I am so honored to be here, and I'm holding this drum, which is elk skin. I purchased it from a brother, a Native American brother, and this to me represents the wholeness of what we need in our world. I believe that the earth was damned by many, and it's caused the roots. It's as above, so below, as below, so above. We have to bless the earth. We have to include all animals, insects, all lizards, all beings that fly in the sky, crawl on the earth, and swim in the seas and the waters. We must all come together for the sake not of just people, but everyone. And that will keep our world a safer, healthier, and happier world for all. So that's my message that I wanted to share at the moment that I had. And I have a song to share that kind of turns right into another one pretty quickly. Please join along if you can, if you are able to catch up with it. And here we go. Listen to the wind blowing through the trees. Listen to the sound of the mother's heartbeat. Listen to the wind blowing through the trees. Listen. I am here in your heart, nestled here in your soul. I am here in your heart, nestled here. Listen. Let's all place our hands on our hearts, our feet to the earth, and our arms to the sky. I call down the cloak of the angels. Together we call down the cloak of the angels. falling down as a waterfall of light, guiding, guarding, and protecting us all by day and by night. Great Spirit, God, Allah, Goddess, all the beautiful names of the divine, we pray that you watch over us and our great work, and send love and forgiveness always and ever into our hearts. Blessed be. Amen. Aho. Ashe. Shalom.
Thank you very much. So our next speaker is Mr. Mohammed Khan. Mr. Khan has been a faith and community activist for the past 30 years. He has served as a Muslim chaplain at LA County's Men's Central Jail, as well as president of American Muslims for Sustainability. He currently serves as a board member of the IRTPJ. Mr. Khan has committed his life to serving his local and global community by continuing to advocate for tolerance, peace, and non-violence. Please welcome him.
Assalamu alaikum, Assalamu alaikum, Namaste, Shanti, greetings of peace to everyone. The 8th annual March, Interfaith March, and the theme, Finding Hope in Uncertain Times. I want to share a story with you that is an example of hope. I was born in South Africa, and I happened to be in South Africa, and then I got an invitation to go to a Interfaith Peace Conference in Jerusalem, and I decided to book my ticket. Best price I can get was on El Al Airlines, which is an Israeli airline. So I go to board the plane, and El Al's security interviews me. So he says, "Where are you going?" I tell him the conference. He says, "Do you have a program or itinerary?" So I show it to him, and he asked me, "Is this the only passport you have?" I gave him my American passport. I said, "No, I also have a South African passport." So he said, "Can I see it?" So I gave him both. And then he asked me a question. He said, "Who's paying for your trip?" And I said, "I am." Then he said, "Why would you spend your hard-earned money to go waste your time at a peace conference?" And I told him, "I understand why you can say that, ask that. I understand." I said, "But when you're in a storm, you don't see the rainbow that's on its way. And I represent, and those people who are going, represent that rainbow of hope that peace can be a reality." Then, while I was talking, I looked at his expression, and it pricked his conscience. It was amazing, because he thought maybe I'll argue with him, right? So he said, "Okay, I'll be back." He took my passports, he went back, and he came back to me apologizing. Very defensive. He says, "Look, I'm El Al security, but there's a EU security that also does a check, and they feel that your US passport is fake." I said, "They don't know a real passport from a fake one, because it's real." Then he said, "Look, I cleared you through your South African passport. You're good to go as a South African. You're cleared." So I went through, and then there comes the group that took my passport, and they were trying to prevent me from boarding the plane. And it was that security guard for El Al who argued with them. He said, "Muhammad has a valid passport, he has a ticket, and he's good to go." And they didn't want to argue with him. That's hope. That's hope. So, hope in uncertain times. If we are people of faith and people of God, we never lose hope. God is our hope. God is the one who changes conditions. And Prophet Muhammad said, God will never change your condition unless you change it yourself. And that's why we're doing this march. It's our action. So I just want to end. I love to chant. And if I was Jewish, I'll be a cantor. So I love to chant. So I will end with a small chant. Bismillahir Rahmanir Rahim. Allahumma a'inni ala dhikrika wa shukrika wa husni ibadatik. Ameen Ya Rabbul Alameen. Oh God, help us remember you, worship you, and say thanks to you in the best of ways. Accept our march, send blessings to everyone present and everyone in need. Accept our prayer. You are the Lord of the worlds. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Khan. So we're going to start marching soon. We can all then warm up because I know, we need it. But now I want to take a few minutes first to thank all the volunteers who have helped make this march possible. So I think we can give them a hand because we wouldn't be here without them. Now our friends in law enforcement will have a very visible and proactive presence as well at this march in order to ensure safety and security for all. We ask that everyone abide by the laws and regulations governing this area and that everyone practice good habits of courtesy and tolerance toward all. Now to kick off the march, please welcome Mr. Ali Twinney.
Thank you. Greeting to all. And thank you for being here. I know you left so many important things, including some good sports today. There's basketball, there is baseball, and there is a lot of things. So everyone who made a decision to be here today is for a good reason. So we can amplify our voices, stand together as one. We all member of the human family, and walk together to march for hope. I'm a labor leader, and I'm in the business of selling hope. I organize workers, give them a voice in the workplace, and assure them that tomorrow will be a better day. As a society at large, we have the same responsibility. Stick together, work together, march together in one voice. Please help me out throughout the march and repeat after me some chants to energize us and make us continue this great march. Thank you.
We're gonna say peace. Yes. Okay, so and let's do. You want to do like a piece, like like that or like that. But let's peace. There we go. Okay, in the count of 3. 1, 2, 3. Peace. Yes. One more time. 1, 2, 3. Peace. Yes. Perfect.
Good people. Working for justice.
Working for justice.
Working for service.
Working for service.
Working for
Jack is fun.
I do like, I've never talked about it, but spread out the things.
Solidarity, we need to do a lot of things because solidarity is a verb. Solidarity is the work that we do. So we need to continue this great work. Make today is that new beginning of hope. As this march is for hope. So the hope for continuation of the work for peace, the work for justice, the work for equality, the work for love, the work for fairness. So we can not just make a difference, be the difference, be the difference.
I guess that would be a more interesting story. Not even that.
Everywhere we go, people wanna know.
People
People wanna know
who we are.
who we are.
Shall we tell them?
Shall we tell them?
We are the people.
We are the people.
The mighty, mighty people.
The mighty, mighty people.
All good people.
All good people.
Working for justice.
So our next speaker is James Whitaker from the Unitarian Universalist Community Church. James Whitaker serves as a co-chair of the Faith in Action Commission of the Unitarian Universalist Community Church of Santa Monica, which works to advance social and environmental justice on the west side of LA with many interfaith allies and community partners. He also serves on the board of the Unitarian Universalist Humanist Association, which celebrates the humanist tradition of inquiry and ethics through scholarship, education, and advocacy.
Thank you. I know those a little bit of a mouthful. Thank you. It's a privilege to be among such esteemed today, and I want to thank everyone for coming out. I'm very grateful. And grateful to the IRTPJ organizers and all the volunteers for making this happen. I mean, the 8th time out. Also, I just want to thank my Santa Monica UUs for showing up. Right? Thanks. I'm aware that sometimes our interfaith friends are confused about who the Unitarians are and what we believe. And that's okay, because we're confused about those things too sometimes. We don't have a creed or a central text, so sometimes people know us by the jokes and the quips, like Unitarians in prayer with "to whom it may concern." The Unitarian missionaries now on a small planet we share together. And so in 2016, when we first got wind of this event, we knew we had to show up, and we thank you all for welcoming us. As has already been alluded to, the certain particular rhetoric was on the rise. Some forces have been unleashed, and we are already seeing attacks on our neighbors, something has not stopped, and it's been well documented. But 2016 also was not the beginning of intolerance, right? And no single effort will be the end of it. Despite the fact that the right to worship and live in peace is an idea as old as American democracy, right? But like democracy, tolerance, peace, and justice are things that we have to keep. We're not done working for, and that's something that Eric has helped to teach us all. But this is something we have to keep doing. I think there's really powerful potential in what the interfaith community can do together. I know that religious traditions speak deeply to the hearts of people of faith, and also they speak powerfully to society at large when they are able to unite in cause. That's the kind of unifying and humanistic spirit, I think, that ran through the life of the late Senator Kennedy. He said, any act of hatred tears at the fabric of our society. He spoke against the mindless menace of violence, something that we still struggle with in this country, especially one that is drowning in guns. But he also taught people all over the world that every act for peace and justice sends out a tiny ripple of hope. And those ripples can build together to become bigger. So, I just hope that we all will keep walking together, keep working together, so that my 3-year-old son and children of every faith, philosophy, and creed, to borrow a phrase, can inherit the community and world that we want them to. Right?
Thank you. Thank you. Now our next speaker is Rabbi Neil Gomez-Daniels. He is the Rabbi Emeritus of Beth Shir Shalom, the Progressive Reform Synagogue in Santa Monica, West Los Angeles. In addition to his emeritus duties of teaching and participating in the music at Beth Shir Shalom, Rabbi Gomez-Daniels now serves as a spiritual advisor for clients and their families of a local hospice agency. He also is the Rabbi in residence at Mount Olive Lutheran Church. Please welcome him.
Hi, everyone. Thank you all for being here. So my first two intense spiritual experiences were actually not my first, but all the way through my life so far, my most important spiritual experiences have been in an interfaith context. The first one occurred at Riverside Church in New York. I was still a rabbinical student, and there was an interfaith gathering to protest nuclear proliferation at the time. And a colleague of mine, a fellow classmate of mine, said, "Neil, go to this event and sing something Jewish." So I went to the event, prepared to sing something Jewish, but and I did. But what I really remember was sitting in the balcony and looking at this amazing event that ultimately gathered about 3,000 people. And of course, there were so many. There were, because it was at a church and so on and so forth. There were Christians of every ilk that were there, but there were Muslims and Buddhists and Sikhs and Hindus, and everybody was there. In fact, many Native American tribes were there as well. And I was awed and inspired by what was coming from the pulpit. And then finally, just before we left, we made a pledge together. The pledge was to be peacemakers rather than just peacekeepers. And during that moment, something opened up in the world for me. It was almost like curtains opening horizontally in front of my eyes. But it really wasn't in front of my eyes, it was in front of my heart. And I saw light. And then almost as soon as the curtains opened, they closed. And I was left with that experience and didn't exactly know what it was. Well, I had a twin event, in a sense, 30 years later. I was at the Blue Mosque in Istanbul. And while I was there, I was there on an interfaith trip that ultimately would go to Israel-Palestine. And the Muslim leader was Jihad Turk, Dr. Jihad Turk, who used to be the imam and religious director over at the Islamic Center where we're going. And Jihad said, "Come on, pray. It's time for Muslims to pray at this time of the day, so come on and pray with us." And I said, "Nah, I don't think I'm ready to do that yet." And I wasn't at the time. I am now, but I've done it many times, but not then. And so I started wandering around the mosque. And I found this little niche that just felt so powerful and so spiritual and so beautiful, and I just stood there staring. And while I was staring, Jihad has finished his prayers, and he came over to me and he said, "Now get on your knees and pray with me." And I thought in my head, I didn't say anything, but I thought, I just told him that I didn't want to do this. But I felt the urgency and the deep, deep sense of friendship in his voice, and I got down on my knees. He didn't say anything. There wasn't any music. There was no great revelation. There wasn't, even this time, curtains and a light. There was nothing. We were just there. And it was one of the deepest moments of prayer that I've ever had in my life. And we got up at the same time, on a signal, but not. And then he said, "The reason I came over is because you're not supposed to be here as a non-Muslim. And there was a guard coming to shoo you away, and I came over to rescue you." But in my wonderful spiritual ignorance, I didn't know that. So I had this incredible, transcendent, epiphanous moment. It was amazing. The reason that I share these stories with you today is because you have to understand how powerful it is, what it is to be in this interfaith context and what it can do. There is no voice in the world like this voice. There is no presence in the world like this presence. There is no experience in the world like being together like this. And especially marching from place to place, as you probably know, in the tradition of Dr. Martin Luther King, friend, Rabbi Abraham Joshua Heschel, we pray with our legs. Every step you're taking is a prayer. You don't have to say anything. You don't have to have any button on. You don't have to have any prayer shawl on or any covering on your head. It doesn't matter. Every step you take, shoulder to shoulder, these people, is an indelible impact on this world that will transform your consciousness, activeness. It will transform hope into power. It will transform peacekeepers into peacemakers. May it be so. Won't be silent anymore. Someone's hurting my sisters and it's gone on far too long. Yes, it's gone on far too long. Yes, it's gone on far too long. Someone's hurting my sisters and it's gone on far too long. And we won't sit quiet anymore. And thanks to some states who now want children to work in dangerous places. Someone's hurting our children and it's gone on far too long. Yes, it's gone on far too long. Oh, it's gone on far too long. Someone's hurting our sisters and it's talking about your children, thank you. We won't say quiet anymore. Someone's hurting our neighbors and it's gone on far too long. Gone on far too long. Yes, it's gone on far too long. Someone's hurting our neighbors and it's gone on far too long. And we won't stay silent anymore. Someone's hurting my brother and it's gone on far too long. And it's gone on far too long. Yes, it's gone on far too long. Someone's hurting my brother and it's gone on far too long. And we won't stay silent anymore. And we're gonna do some singing as we walk. So just follow along. From this place to the next.
Keep on walking, marching up the freeway.
Ain't gonna let the supreme turn me around, turn me around, turn me around. Everybody's got a right to live. Everybody's got a right to live. And before this can be we'll all go down. Every woman's got a right to choose. 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 And before this campaign ends, we'll all go down to jail. Every woman's got a right to choose.
Everybody's got a right to dream. Everybody's got a right to dream. Everybody's got a right to dream. And before this campaign fails, we'll all go down to jail. And everybody's got a right to dream. Everybody's got a right to vote. All go down to jail. Everybody's got a right to live.
Yes, we're here. Thank you very much, Rabbi. That was great. Good. So now it is my honor to welcome back Dr. Eric Greenberg.
Thank you, Olivia. So we're running a little bit short on time, so I'm going to keep my comments here very, very brief. And essentially, I'm just going to take a moment to thank Reverend Andy Schwiebert, who is the, do we call you rector, or is it rector term? Pastor, yeah, the pastor of Emmanuel Presbyterian Church, which has been part of this Interfaith March since the very beginning. So thank you very much, Emmanuel Presbyterian, for having us. And I want to thank all of you for making it this far. We've got a little bit further to go, all right? And I'm supposed to be pointing in that direction? Okay. Oh, I see. All right. So with that said, I will turn it over to Reverend Andy Schwiebert.
I just want to lift up a word of greeting on behalf of Emmanuel Presbyterian Church to our sisters and brothers, our siblings across LA and the greater LA region, and just ask our folks from Emmanuel to wave. Quiero pedirles a decir un saludo de parte de todos nosotros de la Iglesia Emmanuel Presbyteriana. And it's an honor and a pleasure to be together again. And I just want to thank you all for participating and for the leadership for including Emmanuel yet again. And Emmanuel is a Presbyterian church, and we honor our siblings of other faith traditions because we affirm the Judeo-Christian concept of Imago Dei. We believe we were, all of us, human beings created in the image of God, not just Presbyterians or Christians or even all of us. We're created in the image of God, and as such, we are all siblings and neighbors to one another. And throughout our sacred scriptures, time and again, we are called to love our neighbors as ourselves. In fact, we remember Jesus, in responding to the question from religious scholars, who is my neighbor, helped all of us to understand that it is not one's belief system or set of creeds that makes one a neighbor to another, but rather it is the very act of caring for another in our moments of need that is what makes us neighbors. Emmanuel and the Karsh Center of the Wilshire Temple and the Islamic Center and many other congregations share resources with one another in service to our neighbors in need through our food pantry network called HopeNet. And since the beginning of the pandemic, when Emmanuel's food pantry operations increased exponentially, we have partnered with the Islamic Center in coordinating additional food deliveries to support their food pantry program, and also in opening up our kitchen to volunteers from the Islamic Center as they prepare ready-to-eat meals that they deliver to unhoused neighbors in Skid Row and elsewhere across the city. We have built strong relationships as neighbors and indeed as friends. This is what it means to be neighbors. To love and care for one another. And being neighbors involves demonstrating that respect and standing together in the face of bigotry and hatred and violence and indifference. We were saddened and outraged to learn of the recent bigoted vandalism at the front doors of our neighbors and friends at the Islamic Center of Southern California. We were saddened to learn of the recent anti-Semitic attacks in places like Colleyville, Texas, or in hate speech by celebrities against our Jewish siblings, both here in neighborhoods of this city as well as across the country. And unfortunately, none of these examples are surprising given the rise in hate speech in recent years by some and the cynicism of weak-spined politicians who refuse to denounce it. I pray that we will continue to find common ground and common purpose as siblings of the same Creator God. I pray that we will find creative ways to reject and drown out hate speech and extinguish bigoted acts of cowardice and violence, and I pray that God might give us the courage to speak up and stand up shoulder to shoulder in solidarity and love. Amen? Amen. Continue marching.
Okay, good. We're going to do a quick group photo here for like 1 minute. Everyone onto the stair. That's right. Perfect. I love that. Good. 2, 3, and I know you've been marching, you've been standing. Express the joy and love that it is this moment. Like, show me on your face that joy and love. You ready? 1, 2, 3. Joy! Nice. Okay, we got it. Let's roll. We'll walk.
Let's march. Working for fairness. Marching for fairness. Everywhere. Everywhere we go. People wanna know. Who we are. Shall we tell them?
Shall we tell them?
We are the people.
So there's Sikh temples a lot of places. Actually, the ones up in the valley, up on Laurel Canyon. That's the closest.
How about you, man? That's right.
Working for love. Everywhere. Everywhere we go. People wanna know. Who we are. Shall we tell them? We are the people. The mighty, mighty people. All good people. Working for justice. Marching for justice. Working for peace. Marching for peace. Working for equality. Marching for equality. Working for fairness. Marching for fairness. Everywhere. The people united will never be defeated.
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 Everywhere we go. People wanna know. Who we are. Shall we tell them? We are the people. The mighty, mighty people. Working for justice. Working for equality. Working for peace. Working for love. Working for fairness. Everywhere. All right.
Congratulations, we made it. We are doing one last group shot and we're going in and cooling off. Okay, you ready for this? So, everyone behind.
Thank you.
Ready, guys? For celebrating not only doing this, but also finishing this. Marching. And I believe I'm going to say this on behalf of Dr. Greenberg. If you would like some of these photos, you can reach out Yes, okay, so here we go. And the count of 3. 1, 2, 3. One more, 2, 3, and then peace. Everyone, peace. 1, 2, 3. Peace. One more, 1, 2, 3. Peace. Yeah. Beautiful. I'm sorry, not get there. Okay, here we go. I've got this one. I'm only doing one extra one. There we go. Beautiful. Okay, let's go inside.
Good afternoon. We made it. So for those who are just joining us now, I'm Reverend Olivia McDuff from the Church of Scientology, and it has been my great honor to serve as your Master of Ceremony for this Interfaith March. Now, as mentioned earlier, with hate crime and hate speech on the rise within the country, but also the world, and the world being more and more divisive, it has never been more important to unite as one strong voice and stand for what we believe in: freedom, equality, and justice. So now, please join me in welcoming Sheikh Assam Buyuksoy, Director of Religious Affairs of the Islamic Center of Southern California, for a prayer.
Thank you very much. Peace be upon all of you. Welcome to the Islamic Center of Southern California. I'm going to start with Surah Al-Fatiha, the opening chapter, and then do a short prayer. Bismillahir Rahmanir Rahim. Alhamdulillahi Rabbil Alameen. Ar-Rahmanir Rahim. Maliki Yawmiddin. إياك نعبد وإياك نستعين اهدنا الصراط المستقيم صراط الذين أنعمت عليهم غير المغضوب عليهم ولا الضالين آمين. O God, the most merciful, the most compassionate, you are our Lord and the master of our souls and the guardian of our conscience. Please give our souls piety and our conscience purity. Guide us to the best of deeds and the best of morals, as none can guide to the best except you. Our Lord, please unite us in rejecting hatred and oppression, bigotry and violence, and make us among those who strive for freedom of worship and belief and goodness and piety. Ameen.
Now we invite Dr. Lina Al-Sarraf, Vice Chair of the Board of Directors of the Islamic Center, to give a few words of welcome.
Greetings of peace. Good afternoon. Unfortunately, our chair, Dr. Walid Shimdi, couldn't be here, so I am here standing in for him. I want to, on behalf of the Islamic Center and our board, to welcome you here to the Islamic Center. And more than ever, in these uncertain times, we definitely need to come together in solidarity. And so I want to say, may God guide us, protect us, and bless you all. Thank you.
And now I welcome Mrs. Susanna Johansson from the Church of Scientology.
Okay, so hi everybody. So I am here for this. So on behalf of the Institute for Religious Tolerance, Peace and Justice, I am here doing raising awareness on what we are doing. So this is one interfaith march. This is actually not only in LA, but many places all over the world. And some of these marches don't have enough money to cover the permits or essential funding. So that's why all the donations that goes to the Institute are very, very meaningful. So I'm gonna start with, on behalf of the Church Scientology of Los Angeles, I'm gonna put $50 into this box. And you're all welcome to do the same. Thank you. So I want to stress that all the work done by Ari Greenberg and all the volunteers at the Institute is completely volunteer basis. So any donations that you do go directly to the interfaith purpose and the goal that the Institute is doing, not only here in LA, but all over the world. So all the funding goes directly to what we are all supporting, which is interfaith harmony, interfaith dialogue, and peace. On your chairs, you have a little envelope. You can put any donation amount on there, anything counts. We're gonna have the box right at the reception when you leave. So please take that envelope and do some type of meaningful donation towards the Institute. We all thank you very much for that. So thank you.
Thank you, Susanna. So our next speaker is Dr. Lois M. Sprague. She is the president of the Gibbard Center, Religion Inside Out, a spiritual interfaith nonprofit created by the late Reverend Dr. Gwyn Gibbard. The center aims to open hearts and minds by kindling the spark of spirituality that lives in all of us and that motivates us to do good. She began her systemic work in Watts Willowbrook in the aftermath of the first LA riots in the late 1960s and has dedicated her life to striving for a more just and empowering world for all. Please welcome her.
Thank you all. It is so wonderful to be back in the Islamic Center. Thank you for welcoming us, and thank you everyone for participating in this march today. We are grappling with how to find hope in an uncertain time, confronting violence and bigotry and incivility. Where do we find hope? We find it here. We find it right here. Hope is in each and every one of us. It's here in our hands, reaching out to one another. It's here in our feet, marching together. It's in our voices, speaking up on behalf of our friends and our neighbors. Hope is here in our hearts, affirming that we are one, that we are all in this together. We are family, one family from the Creator. It was our beloved Dr. H., peace be upon him, who said, "All faiths say to love God and be good to your fellow man." All the rest is commentary. He, of course, was quoting a rabbi and a Sikh and a Baha'i and a Christian, because at the heart of all faiths, there is the same belief that we love God and we do good. We are kin. We are woven together in one creation. That's just the truth of it. No one can force us to deny that. No one. So where do we find hope? It was here at the Islamic Center on the day after 9/11, when our Japanese American brothers and sisters came to protect this place and all of our Muslim brothers and sisters in it. It was here on the day when Donald Trump was inaugurated, when the Gibbard Center and our colleagues in the Jewish and Christian and Sikh communities and beyond all came to say to the new administration, these are our friends, our family. We stand with them as one. We will not back down. We will not back away from them. Hope was there on the day of the Muslim travel ban, when we all rose as one and headed to the airport. I don't ever think Los Angeles has seen as many people get to the airport as fast in its entire history. Where's hope? It is in the voice of the ancestors rising all around us, the voice of the Chumash, Tongva, Gabrielino, and the many other native tribes that once filled this land, who understood in ways that we are just awakening to, that it is all about kinship. We are connected in ways far, far deeper than we understand. No matter the mischief makers who would stroke grievance and resentment among us, we will not listen. We will not allow them to lead us astray. We will not give up on one another. We will not walk away. We will not turn away. We will not turn upon one another. No, my brothers and sisters, we walk and march and reach out and speak up and give a hand to one another, because that's what you do for your family. Now, we all know there's somebody in the family who makes us crazy. There's somebody in the family who is angry and bitter and upset, and we can't give up on them either. And that's the really challenging piece of this. Make no mistake, we are a family created by something far greater than ourselves that works for good. And in that is our hope and our strength and our allegiance. Thank you.
Thank you, Doctor. Now, our next speaker is Deacon Daniel Tam. Daniel's work focuses on the common good. He chairs Interfaith Solidarity Network, Cultivating Peace Building, Housing Justice and Climate Action. Deacon Tam is assigned to All Saint Episcopal Church in Beverly Hills and engaged with the Bishop's Commission on Climate Change, the LA Faith and Ecology Network, West Side Coalition, and LA County's Faith Collaborative to End Homelessness. He worked for a decade as a political organizer and 5 years in the LA Mayor's office, lifting people out of poverty and spreading the gospel of sustainability and environmental justice. Please welcome.
Thank you very much. I'm Daniel Tam, and it's good to be here among friends. I was listening to that introduction, and I'm thinking that's a lot of different things that guy's involved in, and that's how I see interfaith engagement. You know, interfaith engagement is everywhere, and we need to be everywhere in everything. At Interfaith Solidarity Network, we're about 40 faith communities in the San Fernando Valley. We're based there, but we work all over the place. We made a decision a couple of years ago to really narrow our focus. We are involved in events like this, responding to all kinds of threats and challenges to our siblings in various faith communities. But we see solidarity as being something where it requires of us humility and honesty and courage and a willingness to show up for each other. It is also an active practice of nonviolence, which is all of the above, plus actively engaging in peace building. Now, peace building is not just a strategy, it's to achieve an outcome. It's a way of life. It's how we live our lives. And it's how we build a just and compassionate society dedicated to the common good. Now, there's some tangible ways that we at ISN find hope in an uncertain world. We made a decision to focus on housing justice and taking action around our changing climate. To keep our focus, I don't know about you, but I need to really keep it as simple as I possibly can so that I'm not spread around too thin. So housing justice and climate action are two areas we really focus on. We have just gotten involved in United to House LA. That's Measure ULA. You may remember that. And God willing, you voted for it in November. And by the way, it passed with about 58% of the vote. What you did with that civic engagement, with using your vote for ULA, is that you created a permanent funding stream for building permanent supportive housing. So when we reach the logjam of where can people go who are on the street or who are on interim housing, they've got to get into permanent supportive housing. Well, you just created a permanent stream of funding for that. So thank you for that. The other, you can give yourself a applause. That's okay. The other thing we did, we've done a lot of other things, but just recently we organized a group of faith leaders to show up at City Council and stand up and testify in support of the mayor's proposal for homelessness. It's a $1.3 billion proposal, never totally unprecedented, but it's not just the money, which is significant and necessary. Every dime is necessary. It's the way the mayor has allocated the funding. We are blessed with a mayor who really has a sense of the comprehensive, of the whole total picture. And she sees things, she sees underneath what needs to be done, and she gets there too. So we showed up to testify for that. We also are working on something that's in the state Senate right now. It's Senate Bill 4, which is basically going to allow churches, mosques, synagogues, and temples to build 100% affordable housing on their underutilized real estate. Now, I look around here and I don't see really any underutilized real estate, so I'm wondering, how strong is the roof? You know, is it pretty well structured? Anyway, but imagine that all throughout the state of California, the amount of land that's going to free up to be able to build 100% affordable housing. And that has just passed its second committee, and it's moving on to appropriations. So this is people of faith advocating, sending emails, calling their assembly members, getting in people's faces and going, what are you doing about this? We are the faith community. We are voters too. What are you doing about this? And lastly, I want to say that we do support strongly the care of God's creation and climate action. Currently, we're focused on climate finance. Thanks to people of faith sending in emails and calls into the state Senate, a bill called SB 252, which will divest the state's enormous pension funds of investment in fossil fuels. Yes, that's passed another committee as well. This is the slow, sometimes arduous, but joyful work of justice. When asked, what would God have us do? The prophet Micah said, you know what God would have you do. Love kindness, do justice, and walk humbly with your God. Thanks for your time and for all that you do.
Thank you very much, Deacon. Now our next speaker is Ali Tweeney, former Vice Chairman of the Board of Directors at the Islamic Center of Southern California. Ali Tweeney is an executive board member at Teamsters Local 2010, a labor organization that represents thousands of workers across California. He was appointed to the California Employment Training Panel by the President of the California State. Please welcome.
Thank you. In the name of God, the most merciful, the most compassionate, I greet you with what's good, holy, and true. I greet you with peace. Assalamu alaikum. May peace and blessing be upon all of you. I piggyback on what Dr. Lina Sarraf said to welcome all of you to the Islamic Center of Southern California and let you know that our hearts, our doors, and our minds are open wide to receive all of you. If this is your first time, thank you for joining us. If you've been here before, we welcome you back. If you desire to learn more about the Islamic Center, we're active in all social media outlets, so please check him, like us, and connect with us. If you desire to get more information, visit the front desk and sign up for our newsletter, and you get all the information about all the work that we do here. Many of you have heard about the attack that the Islamic Center have incurred during Sunday, Easter. It was great people of character like all of you throughout the city of Los Angeles who stood up together and said no. And that's the hope that we all get, that it's not going to be tolerated. Everybody stood. We were overwhelmed with all the messages of love, the messages of care, the solidarity that we received from all of you. And we're grateful for our brothers and sisters in law enforcement who were so quick to apprehend the suspect and bring them to justice. But in the same token, I want each and every one of you to join me in praying for the safety of your community and ours. And also, let's pray for those who commit these acts, because they're misguided and they have lack of education about who we are as people of faith and what we can do together. So we're praying for their guidance so they might find light, because it seems like they're swaying a little bit from light. I used to think that interfaith is what we do, but now I know that interfaith is who we are. And as people of different faiths and different walks of life, we are the bridges to peace building and understanding one another. And diversity is not who we are, but it's what we do by being kind to each other, being kind to those who's different than us, and work with and understand all members of our human family and learn from them. Let us be kind enough to learn about each other and get to know each other more in order to secure a shared future, a future that's built in fairness, justice, peace, equality, and love. Diversity, in fact, is a sign that leads us to God. In the Quran, it says, and I quote, "And among his signs is the creation of heavens and earth, and the variation in your languages and your colors. Verily, in that are signs to those who know." These are not just words for the Muslim community. It's shown in the Constitution of Medina, drawn by Prophet Muhammad, peace be upon him, 1400 years ago, to serve as the world's first Muslim policy. The Constitution explicitly guarantees the right of non-Muslims to practice their religion freely and to govern themselves according to the laws of their faith. This continues to be the mainstream view of Muslims down to the present day. The vision of Islam is inclusive vision, calling for respect for human diversity. Many people all over the world celebrated holidays during the month of April. Muslims, Christians, and Jews celebrated Easter, Ramadan, and Passover. It's a phenomenon that happened every 30 years. Maybe as a human, we need a reminder every 30 years that we all one and we can work together and find a better tomorrow. I will end with the poem titled I Am Diversity, written in 2012 by Charles Banfield, who is a pastor and a poet located in Georgia. I am diversity, please include me. I am present in every place you go, depending on your lens. I'm a friend or foe. I'm a force to be reckoned with. Like the wind of change, I move, I'm swift. I am present when two or more are together. If embraced, I can make the good even better. I'm not limited to age, gender, or race. I'm invisible at times, and yet all over the place. Don't exclude me due to lack of knowledge. Welcome me like a recruit fresh out of college. My name is Diversity, and yes, I stand tall. Recognize me and keep me in the mix. Together, there is no problem that we cannot fix. I'm your best hope towards true innovation. And to many, I reflect hope and inspiration. Your lives and companies will continue to change. Thus, the need for diversity and inclusion will always remain. Do all you can to truly embrace me and experience life's fullness totally. I am the thought lurking behind the unfamiliar face. I am the ingenuity that helps your team win the race. I am the solution that came from the odd question that was asked. I stand out in the crowd. When I, Diversity, am allowed to be unmasked. I am Diversity, embrace me, and we'll all journey far. I'm Diversity, include me, and we will reach the shining star. Coupled with inclusion, all lights burn longer. Together, we are smarter, better, and stronger. I am Diversity. Yes, that's me. Thank you for being here. Thank you for marching with us.
Thank you, Ali. So our next speaker is Reverend Winnie Varghese, who is the 23rd rector of St. Luke's Episcopal Church in downtown Atlanta. She was formerly on the staff of Trinity Church Wall Street, rector of St. Mark's in the Bowery in New York City, and the Episcopal chaplain at Columbia University and UCLA. She sent us a pre-recorded video.
Hi, my name is Winnie Varghese, and I'm the rector of St. Luke's Episcopal Church in Atlanta, and I bring you greetings from our community on Peachtree Street, where we try to be an inclusive sanctuary for the city of Atlanta. And greetings to you on this day of this special event. We too are dealing with the kinds of questions that you are, what it means to be peacemakers, people of faith, people of hope in these times. One of the kind of ideas that we stick close to here at St. Luke's is that it takes imagination to seek the truth, and fear is the other side of imagination. Fear keeps us afraid to move forward, and we have good reason to be afraid in this time. You never know when someone's going to pull out a gun, right, is the reality of the times that we live in. We don't know what our neighbors think. And the encouragement of our faith communities is, despite that we insist upon being good neighbors. So we need the tools to take ourselves from fear to that imaginative place where there is hope and there's the capacity for peace building. So a story I told on my first Sunday here at St. Luke's was a story that's not mine, but that a friend told once and has stayed with me in my life because I think it's what most of our lives are about. He's from the same part of India that my family is from, and so the story is particularly resonant for me because I can imagine it, but I bet that you can as well. So he tells the story of being a little kid and going with his grandfather to a meeting at night, something at night, probably a church meeting, in the dark, and there were no streetlights, and they were going up an incline of some kind that felt like a mountain to him. It's probably a hill. He was little guy. And that they had a torch or a flashlight. His grandfather had it. It was on a piece of plastic around his arm, and he held out this light and swept it in front of them as they walked towards the place they were going. And he felt safe. He was with his grandfather, holding his hand up high, trying to match his stride and walking in the clear light of that flashlight. But as they started to go up the mountain, which is it's a rainforest, so there are trees everywhere, and it's dark, instead of casting the light in front of them as they walked, he said he noticed that his grandfather dropped the light, so the little string is holding this torch, the flashlight, and he's grabbed the flashlight and he's swinging it back and forth as they walk. So it's pretty tough because he's a little guy and he can't see in front of him. He's got his little slippers on. He can't see if there's a snake or a hole or something he shouldn't step on. So he's trying to catch the little bit of light when the light is swinging forward, wondering what his grandfather's doing, and looking right down in front of him to make sure he doesn't make a mistake. But as his eyes get a little bit more accustomed and he's walking alongside this man, swinging this light back and forth, he notices that if he looks up and puts his head up, he can see ahead of him that the light actually shows him where he's going. So he can look a little bit ahead, but he's got to remember that because as the light swings back, he can't see as well. So he's doing that. He's got his head up and he's trying to remember what he's seeing, walking through the terrain carefully. Then as he walks a little bit, as he does that for a minute, he notices that there are other lights ahead of him, little bits, and they're far away, and there's a little bit of a time where he can see what's even further ahead because there's a light up there. And as he looks a while up, he realizes actually there are plenty of lights ahead. People are ahead of him, but it's still ahead. You still got to, with some courage, make your steps and make your path to that light, the place that you thought the light illuminated ahead of you. He says it takes him another second for his little kid mind to realize, oh, that's the swing back of the light going back. Other people are doing the same thing that his grandfather is doing. His grandfather is shining a light behind him for the people that are coming up behind him. His grandfather was about something much larger than he had understood, and when his head was up, he could take full advantage of that. What a metaphor for the lives that we live. I hope that there is and has always been someone to help light your way, and I hope you will find the place in communities like this where you have the courage to swing the light wide for those that come after you. God bless you. God bless you.
Our next speaker is Reserve Officer Omar Ricci from the LAPD.
Thank you very much. Good afternoon, everybody. You made it here to the Islamic Center. It's a good afternoon. The weather was accommodative and not too hot. So on behalf of the Los Angeles Police Department, I'm usually up here in a different capacity, but on behalf of the LAPD, we want to say thank you to Dr. Art Greenberg, and I know his wife Melissa is here in spirit, so we miss her this year. Looking forward to seeing her again next year. And, you know, I was in one of those police cars that was coming down Wilshire in Vermont as we were marching here, and I thought to myself, who's to say that somebody walking on the other side of the sidewalk or somebody in one of the cars that may have driven by or may have been stopped didn't pause for a second and think, did the pause for a second and think that, who's to say that a child in one of those cars didn't turn to their parent and say, what's interfaith? What does peace and justice mean? And who's to say that that didn't spark something anew? You don't know. You don't know what it is that's going to spark something at some point between a child and their parent, between a husband and a wife. Maybe somebody who was having a bad day saw what they saw today and it changed things around. And so we're proud at the LAPD to have partnered every year since the beginning of this march and look forward to partnering again next year and in years after to partnering with the Institute on this important march, because it may spark something. It's part of who we are as human beings to want to build together. Those of us, I should say, and the LAPD is part of that, to build a better society and to build and strive for a stronger fabric among society. And we realize law enforcement has a role to play, but we need community partners, and we look forward to engaging with community partners in a much stronger way into the future. Thank you very much. I look forward to being here next year.
Thank you, Officer. Now, our next speaker is Dr. Brad Elliott Stone, who is a professor of philosophy and associate dean of the Bellarmine College of Liberal Arts at Loyola Marymount University in Los Angeles. He is a lay preacher in the Baptist, Congregational, and Episcopal traditions and currently serves as Director of Faith Enrichment and Spiritual Training at the Episcopal Church of the Holy Nativity.
Good afternoon, everyone. I gave a recorded address last year. I was unfortunately unable to be with you last year. I was asked to come and offer tribute and memorial to a good friend. On Thursday, April the 20th, 2023, we lost a real friend and brother and longtime supporter of the IRTPJ and frequent participant, along with his wife, Kristen, in the Interfaith Solidarity March LA, the Reverend Peter H. Rood Jr. From 2003 to 2019, Father Peter served as rector of the Episcopal Church of the Holy Nativity in Westchester. He was also on the board for the Gabord Center, who you've already heard from today. Peter fully embodied interfaith, not only as an idea, but as a way of life. I wanted to frame the comments simply with a song that he used to always sing. During the peace, we were one of those churches where the peace lasts way too long. And so you'd sing a song to try to bring everyone back. And he would simply sing, "May the work I've done speak for me. May the work I've done speak for me. When I'm lying in the grave and there's nothing more to say, may the work I've done speak for me." He knew it wasn't the books he read. He knew it was not the theologies he held. He knew it was not the membership in which church he was in. He knew that we had to do something in the world. For Peter, interfaith started locally. Peter claimed that churches should not have walls or doors, that anything could count as church. He welcomed everyone to the Holy Nativity community. No requirements, no doctrine surveys or creedal agreements. Everyone was welcome. One didn't even have to come to church on Sunday to be a member of the Holy Nativity community. Perhaps one frequently played in the pocket park in the week, or someone volunteered in the community garden. Others might come to bake bread or cook a pizza in the outdoor oven. If any idea came about how to enrich the lives of our neighborhood, Father Peter was definitely game for it. And he met a lot of people that way. And the second he found out that anyone was interested in anything or good at anything, he would use it. He allowed people to be themselves and to give the fullness of their gifts to the community. He was truly a friend to us all and was able to open himself up in friendship with others. When we are friends together, we do not need ideological agreements or even tolerance, as we heard earlier in the beginning of our march. Friendship will do the work. And when we're friends together, we'll learn from each other. Our friends show us new things. Our friends help us become better. May the friends I have speak for me. May the friends I have speak for me. When I'm lying in the grave and there's nothing more to say, may the friends I have speak for me. Because the love I share speaks for me. May the love I share speak for me. When I'm lying in the grave and there's nothing more to say, may the love I share, may the love you share, may the love we share speak for me. Amen.
Now our next speaker is Miri Whitehill. Miri Whitehill started Miri's List in July 2016 when a friend introduced her to a family of new arrival Syrian refugees resettling in Los Angeles with kids the same age as her own. Prior to living in Los Angeles, Miri lived in Tel Aviv, Israel. Miri's first book, Our World is a Family, a picture book about being a good neighbor, was published in March 2022. Welcome.
Hello, everyone. Can you hear me all right? Yes. so nice to be here. Thank you so much for having me. It's truly an honor. My name is Miri Whitehill. I'm the founder and executive director of Miri's List. We are a nonprofit organization based right here in Los Angeles, working with families who are resettling as refugees in the United States. Miri's List began in 2016 when a friend of mine, a neighbor in Eagle Rock, where I live, introduced me to a family from Syria that just moved to LA, and she had met them through her church. I visited that family in their home, and I met their children. They had a 5-month-old baby. They also had 2 5-year-olds who were about to start school. And while I was there, I could look around the room and notice that their apartment was not completely set up to be functional and safe and comfortable for their family. So, wanting to help them out, I called a friend who was our interpreter. This friend is somebody who was my next door neighbor when I lived in Tel Aviv, and he spoke English and Arabic and Hebrew and a few other languages, and we walked around the house. And together we made a list of the things that they needed to get their home set up. And I drove home that day with a handwritten list of about 40-something items that this family needed to get set up so they could function fully in their new home. And I had a plan. I was going to go onto Facebook and I was going to type in their list on Facebook, and that's exactly what I did. I made the post and I told my friends about the family, and I put everything in. I numbered it, and I said, as you donate these things, I'll remove it from the list and mark it fulfilled. But before I hit post, I got nervous, and this little thought in my mind was asking this question: are you getting too involved? You don't even know these people. Also, you have 2 kids of your own. How should your energy be spent here? Speaking of friendship, at that moment, I called my best friend. Her name is Cindy, and I told her about the family that I had met that day. I told her about their kids, told her about the list, and I said, so what do you think? Should I slow my roll? And she listened so carefully, and she paused to think and process, and then she said, Miri, what would Jesus do? And I said, I have no idea, I'm Jewish. And she explained, Miri, you can't unknow what you know. You have to help them. And she gave me permission to go forward, and I made that post. And that was the day that Miri's List began. And since then, I have learned so much. I have learned about the origin of the refugee resettlement system in the United States, which began in the 1940s. While the Nazis took power in Europe, the US government created a system to admit refugees to the United States. I've also learned that the system has mostly stayed stagnant since then. If you can imagine, going to the DMV to get your license, and the person standing there at the desk is the one person who can help you doing that. That's kind of what refugees go through when they come to the United States. They receive a caseworker from a resettlement agency. There's one person who's there to help them for the first 90 days. And other than that, it's just dependent on who you are, who you know, and what community you're resettled in. It's very difficult. I decided that I was going to use my knowledge of marketing, because before all this, the day that I met that family, actually, I was on maternity leave from my job. I used to work in advertising, digital advertising. After learning so much, I decided to use my knowledge of digital advertising and marketing and understanding the way consumers think about things and use the internet to make the things they want happen in their lives, to create a platform where anybody could help a resettling refugee family directly, no matter their age, no matter their experience, and no matter their access. I'm going to tell you some of the numbers of what we've accomplished since then, because it's been 7 years. And I'm very happy to share that this week we enrolled the 1,097th family in the Mary's List program. Yeah. Thank you. Those families are made up of over 5,800 individual human beings, half of whom are babies and children. They come from countries including Afghanistan, Syria, Iran, Iraq, and most recently, Moldova and Ukraine. We've also activated a lot of helpers. I told you about this platform that I built that makes it really easy. So far, 256,000 American people have supported and welcomed refugees through that platform that we've created. Yeah. The reason why Mary's List is here, there's two reasons. And the first one you just heard a beautiful song about. The first one is friendship. I was so moved by that. Thank you for being the person who could sing to this group of people. Thank you so much. The second reason is what we are modeling for our children. Whether it's the kids who were driving with their parents and watching everyone here marching, my children, who, by the way, they're 10 and 7 now. They were 6 months and 3.5 the day I met that first family, so they have grown up with this organization as an important part of their lives. Because we've seen today that there's a lot of ways to vote, and it's not just what happens at the polls. We vote with our feet, we vote with our voices, we vote with our wallets, and we vote with the way we spend our time. No matter your faith, who you love, where you were born, the language that you speak, we all deserve to have agency over our lives. We all deserve to be safe, and we all deserve to have a community support system of friends. And I'm going to end by sharing with you a lullaby that I used to sing, probably sang it thousands of times to my kids to help them fall asleep. It's from Psalm 133. Hine matov u'ma na'im, shevet achim gam yachad. How good and how pleasant for brothers and sisters to dwell together. Thank you.
Thank you. Our next speaker is Salam Al-Mariati, who is president and co-founder of the Muslim Public Affairs Council. He is an expert on Islam in the West, Muslim reform movements, human rights, and he's very ready to speak.
I was pushed. Thank you very much. It's really good to be here. Good to have our wonderful Interfaith Forum here. Many reasons for it, but two in particular for us is, number one, we get to have good food. So thank you for bringing the good food. And number two, I get to have a parking space. So thank you for making that possible. And we get to hear beautiful voices of people singing. And thank you for contributing to the enrichment of our religious landscape. But there are 3 points I want to focus on. Number one, this is a hybrid that I put together based on what Reverend Ed Bacon and Dr. Mara Hathout would say about interfaith. And basically the point is, to have faith in America, you must have interfaith in America. And the interfaith America is really the cornerstone of religion, what makes religion flourish throughout our country, what makes America one of the greatest countries because of religion, because people can practice their religion the way they want to. And to have interfaith relations actually strengthens each and every one of our religions, because we get to practice, not just preach, and that is to practice justice and compassion and mercy. And as the Quran says, we cooperate with each other in virtue and God consciousness. So interfaith is very important for us to strengthen our own faith and to strengthen the religious elements of America. Number two is the issue of religious freedom. Now, you can look at religious freedom in one of two ways. Sometimes religious freedom is weaponized to impose the religious dogma of the minority on minorities, of the majority on minorities. But religious freedom is meant to allow for everybody to worship freely as they see. And it was Franklin Delano Roosevelt who came with the 4 freedoms, one of them being freedom of religion, freedom of worship, freedom of thought, freedom from fear, and freedom from want. And he called that human security. So the interfaith community is really where we begin to understand and apply religious freedom for all, to allow people the freedom to worship as they see fit. And that is the elements of America that is so important, this idea of religious pluralism that stands out against religious exclusivism. As the Quran says, you have been made to have different laws and different ways. If God had willed, he would have made you one community, but go and compete with each other in doing good work. And then he will gather you and explain what all your differences was about. So it is God's will to have diversity. It is part of God's mandate, as Ali quoted also from the Quran, the diversity of the colors and languages that God created, the diversity of religions that we have on this earth. It is God's will, and practicing that is part of our religious pillar, part of our religious mandate. The last thing is that the third point is the issue of what we're facing as a threat existentially to our country today, and that is religious nationalism by white supremacists. And they are promoting a conspiracy theory that we, people of different faiths and different colors, are here to replace them. It is called the Great Replacement Conspiracy. It actually started in France by some people who said that the Moroccans and the Algerians were there to replace them, and that their children will suffer genocide by these people of color. Now it has become a part of a counterterrorism issue in our country. It's called domestic terrorism, but it's really not that domestic. It happened in Christchurch, New Zealand. It happened in Norway. It happens throughout the world. It is a transnational threat. But the epicenter is here in the United States. Law enforcement officials have told us that America has become the greatest exporter of hate ideology because of this white supremacist conspiracy theory. So that is what we're up against. And to counter that, we must have the counter-narrative. Just like there was a counter-narrative to ISIS and Al-Qaeda saying that America was at war with Islam, we said, no, America is accepting of Islam. America is enriching us. And so the counter-narrative to the Great Replacement is that we are not here to replace anybody. We're all here to enrich America, to make it a home for everybody. And if we were to achieve anything in terms of moving that counter-narrative forward, we will make our society a better place, and we will make our religions really the sanctuary for all people, whether they believe or don't believe, because at the end of the day, religion is about protecting the human dignity of every creation within which God breathed his spirit. Thank you. Peace be with you.
Our next speaker is Rabbi Joshua Hoffman. Rabbi Joshua Hoffman was appointed the president and CEO of Academy for Jewish Religion California in October 2022. Previously, Rabbi Hoffman served 18 successful years as a congregational rabbi at Valley Beth Shalom Synagogue in Encino, California. He serves as the immediate past president of the Board of Rabbis of Southern California, including serving on the City of Los Angeles Interfaith Roundtable and coordinating several interfaith efforts to build homes here in LA and on the Gulf Coast. Please welcome him.
Good afternoon, everyone. So the hour is late. A lot of amazing things have been said. Many of us were on a march a little earlier, so maybe our toes might have relaxed from some of the walking that we did, but we are definitely feeling the fullness of the moment. And so I just want to share a little story. I was a congregational rabbi for a very long time, and one of my primary responsibilities was telling stories to children in our preschool. So I'm not necessarily making the equivalence of the story that I'm about to tell to my audience here, but I do want to share that this story, even though it's a Jewish story, the thing that I think makes it Jewish is what makes all stories kind of Jewish. There's a rabbi, and there's some students, and they're in a study hall, and a question is asked, and an answer is given. And I think if you take the rabbi out and you put an imam, or if you take the rabbi out or the imam out and you put in the pastor or you put in the father, you'll hear the same story. In fact, I'm pretty sure that it's part of all the preschool stories that are told to all of our children together. The story is very simple. The rabbi turns to his students and says, "How do you know when the night has ended and the day has begun?" And the students, eager to impress their teacher, the rabbi, they come forward with responses, and one comes forward and says, "Rabbi, the night is over and the day begins when I can tell the difference between the animal that's in the distance and whether it is my neighbor's animal or it is my animal." And the rabbi's eyes fall and is quickly lifted up when another student comes forward and says, "Rabbi, I have the answer. The day begins when I could tell the difference between the boundary, the end of my property, and the property of my neighbors. When I could tell the difference between where my world is and his world begins, that's when a new day begins." And the rabbi lowers his eyes once again, and one after the other, the students come forward until the rabbi says, "Stop. You don't understand. All you do is divide. All you do is separate. All you do is distinguish. The night is not over, and the day does not begin when you can find separation. It's when you look into the eyes of another person and you see them as your brother. The day begins when you look into the eyes of your sister and you see that she belongs to you and you belong to her." Today was such a wonderful example of this. We walked around, we followed Dr. Greenberg's advice to introduce ourselves to other people. We made new friends. We see each other. A new day is beginning. New friendships are being formed. Everything beautiful that has been shared today is only amplified when we leave the doors of this gathering space and we continue to see everyone around us as our friends, as our brothers and sisters, as one. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Rabbi. Now our next speaker is Ms. Pupe Madivanider, Ambassador of Peace. 20 years ago, she did a journey around the world by bicycle for peace, which lasted a year and a half. After this, she was chosen as a Face of Peace at the International Youth Peace Festival in South Korea and received the Medal of Peace Heroes by UNESCO in Paris. Now she's a psychologist and also a volunteer social worker and has been for 32 years. Currently, she has about 200 children in her care. 3 years ago, she started a new peace journey to the whole world. It is called Peace Road 2020. Please welcome her.
Assalamu alaikum and hi to everybody. Thank you so much. Thank you, Dr. Greenberg, and all my friends. I'm sorry, I have been for 4 months in America and I had very bad situation because nobody believed me, and I tried a lot to have communication with the peoples, but even Iranians told me, you speak about peace and we don't want to help you. And it was very bad experience. And about 3 weeks ago, I met Mr. Nasser Zomorod in Universal Peace Federation, and it was a little bit better for me. I was a very good feeling, and after that, he introduced you, and I'm here today. My name is Pupe Mahdavi Nader. I'm from Iran. I'm an ambassador of peace and friendship. You know, I travel around the world by bike for peace 20 years ago. And now I have a new mission, a new world journey that I started 3 years ago on the International on the International Peace Day International Day of Peace. I'm sorry. Yeah. You know, I speak very fast. I'm sorry. At the International Day of Peace 2020. My message is simple, and it isn't new. My message is people should plant the seeds of love in their hearts and avoid war and enmity. It isn't new, but its importance at the present times is due to the fact that even in the most advanced countries that they have been the leaders of kindness and friendship and peace, the tendencies of neo-fascism has penetrated into their system. And these tendencies separate people and lead to wars. These tendencies paint a very critical perspective in the world. And I'm a social worker. As a social worker who has spent whole life to help improve the living condition for the people, I am worried because the war are increasing in the world, and which every war it brings more poverty, more orphans, more refugee, social unrest, and something like this. And I am very worried about that. All my peace walks in every country are always planned to be between a monument of peace and a historical symbol of that nation. And I count in every peace walk, I count and record my steps. And it is an opportunity for the people to raise money and donate for orphans and needy. The first peace walk is on May 6th in San Francisco, and the second is on May 13th in Los Angeles. It's my honor if you join me to the peace walk. Really, it's my honor, and I invite you to join me to say we, the people in the world, needs in our short life. I'm sorry. We need love, friendship, security, and happiness and hope, and that means this peace. Thank you so much that he gave me this time. Thank you.
And now it is my pleasure as a final welcome to Dr. Ari Greenberg, who has been the dynamic force behind this march. Dr. Greenberg.
Thank you, Olivia. And thanks to everyone. We're almost there. It's almost done. Love is stronger than hate. How often do we hear that? But how often do we see it in action? In the last several years, I've seen a lot of anger and even hatred being spewed out, even by people who claim to be peacemakers. By the way, I'm saying something a little controversial today, but anyway. There's not a lot of love being expressed from either side of the ideological and political aisle these days, except by a select few. Among those few exemplars, I want to applaud our friends here at the Islamic Center of Southern California for their attitude of compassion toward Carlos Moran as an illustration of the rare act of loving compassion. On Sunday, April 9th, during Ramadan, and coincidentally on Easter Sunday, Carlos Moran allegedly vandalized the Islamic Center with graffiti bearing hateful and Islamophobic messages. He was quickly found and arrested. As Chief Moore said in his statement, LAPD aggressively investigates these kinds of hate crimes because they are often an on-ramp for more serious and violent crimes. But the attitude of compassion and forgiveness and love that I saw from members of the Islamic Center, especially by my friend Omar Ritchie, and I don't know if he's still here today, but I'm praising him, in his televised statements, is truly admirable. There is the possibility that Mr. Moran suffers from mental health issues and that his actions stem from a loose grip on reality. And this kind of loving compassion for an at-risk individual is exactly what we need more of. However, while a poor mental state may be the catalyst for the actions of Mr. Moran and many others who commit hate crimes, not everyone who acts out of hatred is clinically emotionally disturbed. A good deal of these incidents are committed by people who simply have been steeped in bigotry and have marinated in their own hate-filled silos. Even in the case of Mr. Moran, there is still that deep-seated anti-Islamic hatred that underlies his actions. For a person with a tenuous grasp on reality who literally thinks he's a king, you can go and see the news reports, why did he choose to focus his hatred on Muslims? Why not the rainy weather that we've been having? Why not rodents or bugs? Frankly, I'm not too pleased with hummingbirds lately. If you've ever had a hummingbird family as tenants in your backyard, they poop everywhere, by the way, all right? So, after all, why is it acceptable at all to hate any specific demographic of people? Why Muslims? Or for others, why Jews? For Asians, for that matter. There is still the lingering sense of bigotry and prejudice that is drilled into people and becomes acceptable in our society. Bottom line is that our nation seems to need someone to hate. Even in our progressive-leaning community of interfaith activists, there is still an underlying intolerance toward the unknown, often against new religious movements. Why is this okay? To make unfounded generalizations against people that we don't know or understand? So how do we fix this? It's not going to be easy. But I'll tell you what won't work. Hating the individuals who hate us. The more we give them a reason to hate us, the more we say that we hate them, or use aggressive language and metaphors like taking them on, or conquering them, or battling them, the more they feel justified in distrusting us. So who is going to put down their verbal and ideological and sometimes even physical weapons first? So we need to see that same compassion and forgiveness that the Islamic Center displayed, but toward people who are not at risk or suffering from mental illness. I'm talking about people on the other side of the aisle, people who don't think like we do. In my classroom, where I teach college students to read and engage and understand some of the most brilliant religious minds of the ages, including those of Gandhi and Martin Luther King, I've begun to see that one of the things truly lacking in our current socio-political climate, even among the left-leaning liberal activists, is the kind of love for humanity, for the humanity of their opponents, their adversaries, that was embodied by Martin Luther King and Gandhi. They both had it. These are some of the reasons why they didn't see violence as a viable option. Not only because they knew that violence wouldn't accomplish their goals, and that there would be too much loss of life, too much collateral damage, as they call it, but also their ideological adversaries are still fellow human beings. Those who get hurt when you take up arms against your fellow citizens aren't just soulless automatons. This isn't a video game where we can kill as many of the bad guys as we want, and they're just electronic images on a screen. No, these are living, breathing human beings who, if we believe in a higher power, are creations of that higher power just the same as you and me. They have mothers and fathers, and potentially even children and spouses and myriad other loved ones. And I'll invoke the Buddhist principle of universal motherhood here, that at some point in another lifetime, everyone was probably someone else's mother. So why hurt someone who was once probably your mother? But Gandhi and King knew that love was more powerful than hate. They knew that this wasn't just empty rhetoric. It was the most powerful weapon of all, the ability to cut through misinformation and bigotry and the delusion of our perceived inherent separation and difference by offering a sentiment of universal compassion. Every major world religion, even those that do believe in or make provisions for self-defense, every major religion teaches love at its core. And not all of us are practicing what our religions preach. The sense here is that a sword does not convince anyone of the correctness of your position. It may stop you from being hurt. This is why we have laws and law enforcement, to protect people from immediate and direct harm. But only love can convince someone to never take up that weapon against you ever again. Only love can convince someone to listen to your perspective, to your lived experience, to your own authenticity. And so we need to listen to each other and have compassion for those who aren't able to tell the difference between right and wrong, like maybe Mr. Moran. And if they can tell the difference, we need to invite them to the table and talk with them, share our perspective, let them know that we are willing to show them respect and that we expect the same respect from them. To respect our common humanity, that we are humans and we see their humanity as well. A lot of people these days question whether religion is still relevant, especially with the decline in religious affiliation here in the West. But this is where religion still has a role to play, in being the conscience of the world, be it in the public sphere or in the political sphere or in the international arena or the interreligious arena. This is where there is a venue for people of faith, of any faith, and people of conscience to become peacemakers. Let's show each other the love that we expect from them. Let's model loving compassion, like the Islamic Center did when Carlos Moran scrawled hateful messages in a moment of delusion-driven pain and rage. I'm proud to know my friends at the Islamic Center, and I am here to stand with them and to applaud how they handled a very sad and hurtful circumstance. I hope we can all do the same if the circumstances arise. Now, I'll add one minor note here that I had not originally planned. About a year or two ago, I was on a talk show with Reverend Jesse Lee Peterson. I don't know if you know who he is. If you don't, he's a particularly conservative, politically, religiously, and socially conservative individual, a lot more conservative than most of us here. But, you know, he was nice enough to have me on the show and question me, and, you know, we talked pleasantly. But he asked me at one point, regarding my interfaith work, and he said, so you would trust those Muslims? And I said, I'd trust them with my life. The people that I know, I trust them with my life. And that's what I say about the people here who have hosted my students again and again, and have hosted me and my friends here on marches like this. Thank you for hosting us 8 years in a row. So thanks to all of you for being here today. I really appreciate your time, and I hope we'll do this again next year and even the year after that. Thank you. Was Olivia Years, the LAPD, the Islamic Center, all of the houses of worship that took part in this. And if you take a quick look at the program, and our program is for everybody, there's thanks to everybody who in any way, shape, or form took part. We thank you to all of the religious leaders and all of the people who marched. Thank you once again.